This is the Flick 5 channel, and today we are going to be replacing my processor in my late 2013 Mac Pro. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to do it. Easy, easy. We all know how to do that. This thing's, oh man, it's really dirty. I guess we'll keep cleaning it as we go along because there's a lot of stuff in here. So I do have a new processor that I want to keep very clean in the process of taking this apart. So we're going to start off by removing the RAM. So there's two bays for RAM, one there, one right there. So we'll just go ahead and unclick this thing, push that in, they should pop out. And then just pull straight out on the RAM. Click that out, the RAM's gonna pop out. And we wanna just pull them straight out. Just like that. Next, we're gonna remove this top part right here. There's some T10 torque screws. So we got those out there. And we're gonna go ahead and just remove the top part. There's two little screws in here that are holding this pin on for the fan. So we're going to undo those two little screws there, and then we should be able to just pop that fan right out. Well, it looks like we're going to take that whole bracket off. So these screws in this bracket will not come out. So you just want to undo that whole bracket. You can see here that it's in on this pin right here. So we just have to pop that little guy out right there. And then we've got another little guy right here. And I think you can just pull up on that and kind of twist it off, and then that thing just clips back down onto there when it's... This is not acceptable. I need to do a better job of keeping my stuff clean. Okay, so now we're going to do the bottom part. So T10 again, and we're just going to undo all of these little screws that are holding this on the bottom. One piece of advice I have for you is that you should not lose these screws, obviously. Do your best to keep everything together where it should be. I'm going to flip this thing over like so. And we're going to pop that top off. This is the bottom part, I should say. And now it looks like we need to pull off of these two processor boards. There's these big pins, and these things should just pull straight out. So if we just go like this and kind of wiggle it, there it goes. So that guy, be careful not to bend any of those pins. And then we'll do the same thing on this side here. Just like that, same thing, don't bend those pins. And then we're gonna go ahead and remove these screws up on top. So we're gonna go back to the T6. There's only two. Okay, so we're gonna just wiggle this guy up. And you can see, after I get it up, you'll be able to see this a little better. This plug right here was plugged into that board right there. And we're gonna, this is the same kind of plug here as we have here. So we're gonna go ahead and pull that one out. So I found it easy, just if you can get your fingernails underneath those tabs on the side and move them back and forth, you can just slip that right out. We've got this dirty, dirty thing. We need to clean that up. Now we're gonna go ahead and flip this over. Somebody recommended that you actually set this back down in the bottom of the base because it'll just kind of keep it in place. Ooh, that's a good idea. Keeps everything kind of stuck together here. So the next thing that we're going to tackle here is this grate right here on the top. We're going to take that out, and then we're going to be able to remove these 6 screws that are holding this whole power supply portion on, and we'll take that off. So it looks like on this grate there's a screw here and a screw here. So we should be able to loosen those two up. That's a T4. Try not to lose these things. Very important. These guys are so small. They're tiny. The grate should just pop right out now. If you want to see, there it goes. Loosens up. pop that guy right out. We're gonna go ahead and set that down. I'm gonna put the screws for it right next to it so I don't lose them. And now we're gonna go ahead and remove 1, 2, 3, 4. I thought there was 6. Oh, 5, 6. And then we're gonna use a T9 on that. Take out those other 2 or not. So we have removed the power supply now out of there. So we'll set this aside, and then we're going to loosen up these outside screws on the processor clamp that holds it down. Just kind of work your way around. So I'm going to break these free, give it like a half a twist, break that one free, half a twist, break that one free, half a twist, break that one free and a half a twist, and then just keep working your way around. These are spring loaded, so you don't want to undo one all at once because it'll put some strange pressure on the board itself, and it could actually ruin some of the pins or ruin the board. So now we got that out. We're gonna go ahead and just wiggle this. It should come, mine just came right out. Look at that. Not much wiggling to do. So I'm gonna pull out the top part first, and then we'll pull this out. And then this is where the processor will sit. Yeah, so for whatever reason, that screw was supposed to be in here, but it came undone, and now it's on there. Shouldn't be a problem. I should be able to fix that, no problem. Now I need to clean off this thermal paste, so I'm going to use a paper towel, a little bit of rubbing alcohol, I'm not sure if this is the recommended way to do this or not, but it seems like it's working really well. Really well. That thing is nice and clean now. Whoa. Now we're going to get this out of the way, and we are going to move over to the processor that's sitting in here, and we're going to go ahead and clean that one off as well. And if I'm lucky, I might be able to sell this one on eBay. So now the exciting part. We are going to go ahead and remove these inner screws that are holding the processor in on the back here, so it's going to loosen this up. We're doing a star pattern, so we're going from here to here, from here to here, and just rotate that. There it goes. Looks like we've got it out. And the processor is still sitting in there. So when these screws finally do come out and you've loosened this up to the extent where it's ready to come apart like this, just try to hold on to the back part right here underneath, because that's where the processor's sitting and where all the expensive parts are. Either that or just keep it laid flat on a table until you're done. So I'm going to just drop this out just like that, and here's my old processor right there. So that is the one that we just took out, and I know I'm not supposed to be touching those pins, but this is the old one, so I will be more careful on the new one. Let's look at the difference of these. They look really close to being the same, with the exception of this one has a little chunk missing out of the board, but this will only go in one way. That's good. Golly, I'm gonna have to put this thing back together now. I see. So this will only go on and fit one way really well. There are two little slots, one here, one here. So one of them is closer in and it doesn't have, it's actually just a hole, and the other one's a slot. So if you look at the way these pins are sitting, it's really only going to go in one way. And it is that way. It'll only go one way and fit well. Okay, so I'm going to hold that. I'm going to flip this back over. I really don't want that thing to move or slide out of its slot or anything. But I do have to apply some pressure here to get this part to go down. I want to give that enough thread so that it doesn't strip out. And we'll push down on this side and we'll get these screws on this side started. Before we get too much further, let's just go ahead and make sure it didn't move around. It looks pretty good. We're ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten these up the rest of the way. I'm going to do this in that star pattern again. Okay, that processor is in there nice and tight. The next thing is to apply some thermal paste to this so that when we put it back into the housing, that we have a nice connection between this part here, which is the heat sink, and this part here, which is the processor. The big thing is with these things is you just don't want to overheat them. So I ordered this on Amazon. It's pretty basic, easy to find, just a little syringe that has some heat paste in it. Came with this fancy little spreading tool. Here we go. So we're going to apply a pretty generous amount on here. I'm going to say probably want about 1/8 of an inch. I don't know how close to the edge you're supposed to get. The one I just took off went all the way to the edge, and I would imagine that because of the way that these are built, they probably get hot all the way to the edge. So we are going to go straight back on to this board. I'm going to have to deal with this little one screw issue that I have down here, but I think I should be able to handle it. We will put these screws back in, and this will tighten this whole thing down so that these two pieces are going to squish up heatsink processor. Here we go. It's looking good. It's lining up. Oh, there it is. I felt it click in. Alright, so we've got the board on. This tensioner plate is holding it, and now I'm going to go ahead and tighten it up. So like I was doing before, I'm going to go from here to here to here to here. We're just going to snug that thing right up. We are looking good. I'm just going to go through and make sure all of these are tight. That processor is in. Now we're going to just reverse the whole thing that we just did, and we'll go through, kind of clean up anything that needs to be cleaned up. So the next thing that's going to happen is we are going to put the power supply back in, and then the grate, and then we're going to flip it over and put that other board back on. So as I'm putting this back together, I realize that there's a little space right here for this power supply to drop down in there on this base piece. So I'm going to go ahead and just, even though we're temporarily using that, it still kind of has to sit in there the right way so that we can get all of these other screws put in. So we're going to go ahead and put these 6 screws back in. One thing I would recommend is if you had a screwdriver set that you're going to buy, get a magnetic one. These are not magnetic, and you have to kind of be a little bit more careful when you're putting these screws on that they don't do what that one's trying to do right now. Make sure all of those are nice and tight, and then we're going to put that grate back on with that crazy small T4. So the grate came out of the top part right here, and it just slid right in just like that. Oh my gosh, these ones are so small. But you do have to be really careful not to drop them. I'm gonna go ahead and take this back out of that base. We're gonna flip it over. First off, we're gonna reattach this. I'm gonna go ahead and put this pin back onto the back side of this board right down here. And there's two prongs that stick out right here on this side and right here on this side. And those will line up the pins for you, so it's almost impossible for you to screw that part up when you're putting this back together, as long as you've got those two pins lined up on the plastic piece. When you push that back in, it's going to go in nice and easy. So I'm going to line those pins up just like that. We'll pinch that and it just goes together like a piece of cake, no problem. This part here, this big plug right here, this big plug now is going to plug into the board right here. So you want to line that up, push that down. We're going to move back to our T9. We'll put these two top screws back in. Now we've got these guys that we undid. Same thing, they've got those little pins on the side right here that you just line those guys up. Put the pins in first, and then once they're in, you just push it and it'll snap on. Same thing here. Make sure those pins are lined up. Push it in, it snaps on. Okay, so we've got these plugged in. We got the power supply reattached. So let's go ahead and flip it back over the right way so that the power supply is there. This piece here has got a groove in it. This groove. I think you can see it maybe. Give my camera a second to focus. So we're going to go ahead and plop this guy right in here, just like that. Plopped in, everything fits. All right. Now I got my pile of screws right here. I know where they are because I set them next to the bottom when I was using that. And if you guys wanted to be really super thorough about this, you could throw a little tiny bit of blue Loctite on these screws, but I think the stuff that's already on the screws is probably gonna hold it just fine, so I'm not going to do that. The next step is going to be where we took this out, this pin here to put the top on. We pulled this little guy right here. We took that guy out, and that's the thing that's going to hold this pin in position. This pin is going to snap in, and then this thing is just a tensioner piece to hold it in there so it doesn't wiggle loose. And then we have this little wire here that goes onto the power supply back here. Goes into this little bracket there. That'll line up, and you can actually feel it when you push it in. It should just kind of squeeze right onto the little bracket there. And then we're going to take this piece, and this piece will go right on here, just like that. And then we're going to screw that on. Okay, so this one is a T9. Okay. Then we're going to take this little wire on the back, and we're going to plug that guy back into its little plug back here. In hindsight, guys, I think I should have done this first, but I think I can get it from here. So one thing I want to point out before we finish up is that this card right here is actually your memory for the computer. So it's really super easy to change. You don't really have to take much apart to get to it, and you can swap it out for something maybe faster. I don't really know if there's stuff that would work, but I'm going to do a little research on that too. And we're going to do everything we can to make this a very fast machine. So we're going to go ahead and stick this guy on, finish her up. That thing will kind of only go on one way, so click that. Make sure this is fully locked. When you click that in, because if you have it halfway and you try to pick it up, this thing could slide off. Double check it, pick it up, we're good to go. Let's get this thing on the desk and back on the computer and see what it does. Okay, I'm back. It's been a couple days, and I've actually done a couple of editing projects with this new Mac Pro since we put the new processor in. It is definitely faster. There is no doubt when I'm working with 4K footage, I don't get the hang-ups like I used to. I don't get that slowdown and that kind of jumpiness where it's trying to keep up. Sometimes even with this processor, it would just stop and you'd have to wait for about 30 seconds before it kind of figured out what was going on. I didn't get any of that. I have a little tiny bit of, there was one section where I had about 6 layers of video stacked up, and it did get a little bit jumpy with that, but what do you expect? I'm really, really stoked overall, and I think for the investment, you know, the trash cans, you can buy those for about $1,500 on Amazon. This processor cost me about $230, so this, just upgrading this, I already had that. It's costing me under $250 to do this whole entire thing, and I have a really fast machine now, and I am super stoked. So that is what I think of it. Thank you guys for watching. If this was helpful at all, go ahead and hit that thumbs up or subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. And this has been the Flick 5 channel. You will see me in the next video.